Have you ever felt?
Are you listening? Damn.
We have a midge for you, one of the most popular midge dry flies on the planet, but it's a sprout midge. Funny thing is, when I first started tying this or fishing it, I had a buddy from Canada that I fish with a lot, so I thought it was called a sprout midge for the longest time, but you know, it is what it is. Basically a very simple pattern. This is a Daiichi 1130 size 20 in the vise, and we tie them down to size 24 roughly, and you can do that with a good hackle. And Curtis just showed me one of his capes that he has, and this is a size 20 hackle from a cape. It's 8 inches long. It's insane. So anyway, this is a very simple fly, basically just thread body, parachute hackle, and a dubbing thorax. So we'll just build the body first. I typically don't like to put a parachute post in there until I'm ready to tie the hackle. So just wrap down the bend of the hook a little bit and then just bring your thread back up. And I'm just using Uni 8/0, which is a 70 denier thread, or 72 roughly. And right here is where I'm going to put the parachute post. So I'm just going to take some parachute post material. This is the hairline parapost material in white. It's a polypropylene yarn that's treated with some waterproof floaty material that's scientific, and Curtis understands it. But anyway, instead of coming up underneath the hook shank like that, I'm just going to lay it right on top and tie it down really snugly. And then I'll pull those straight up and I'll start parachuting those together to create one clump of yarn. And you know, this isn't the whole hank of yarn that I pulled off out of the package. I basically pulled one out and I pulled some of the fibers out of it. So this is about 3/4 of a hank of yarn. So I'll go up the post and then back down about that far. And it gives a base for us to wrap our hackle. Okay, so now we're going to take our hackle. And with hackle this small, it can kind of be hard to see, especially with the black hackle. But there's a concave side and a non-concave side, or a shiny side and a dull side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie this onto the fly behind the parachute post like this. And I want the shiny side of the hackle to be facing me when I tie this in. Okay? That way when I start to wrap it, that shiny side of the hackle is going to be facing down, which makes the fibers curl up just a little bit, and that makes for a cleaner parachute fly. So I've cleaned off several fibers, and I'm just going to come from behind the parachute post and just catch it with one turn in front of it. And then I'll start to wrap that up the parachute post. And you can see I've got quite a bit of bare hackle stem here. And that's fine. It will give me a little bit of play when I start to wrap that hackle to make sure that the right side is facing down. Okay. So it looks like I got to trim off a little bit here. Okay, so now it's critical that you make this thorax just a little tiny bit of a bump. And the reason why the thorax is important here is so that the hackle has something to butt up against. If you don't, some of the fibers will face down or kind of get bound down. That's not the end of the world, but it doesn't make for the cleanest looking fly. So I'm just going to take some black ice dub and dub that on my thread, just enough to make it look dirty. And you really have to pinch it hard to get it to wrap down that small. And then I'll just wrap it in front and in behind of the parachute post. Just like that. And you can obviously choose a little bit less buggy material, but it's not the biggest deal in the world. So basically, once I have this, I'm going to do one wrap now around the parachute post and let my thread hang behind that parachute post. Then I'll start to wrap my hackle and make sure that one wrap of hackle goes underneath the previous one. About like that. 3 or 4 turns. This is a whiting silver grade. So it's, takes very little hackle. So if you see what I did here, I'll do that again. My thread was hanging behind. Let me try to make this better for you. And I take my thread and I go in between the wrapped hackle and above, like on top of this, the additional hackle. So I'm basically tying this off on the stem, just with 1 or 2 wraps, and then I let my thread hang again. Okay, so now our hackle is wrapped. We're ready to trim some stuff up. And basically you have to Photoshop while you do this. If any of you guys understand the inside joke there. But anyway, I stick my scissors with micro tips up in there and I cut off the excess hackle. And now instead of whip finishing, I'm just going to take some Zap-A-Gap and I'll put a little tiny bit, such a small amount that you can barely see it on this bodkin, and I'm just going to come and mash that behind the parachute post and under the hackle, because that's the last part of thread that's the last place where I wrap my thread. So once I have that, just trim off my thread, and there we have it. Well, I guess we should trim the post. So the parachute post color is kind of up to you. The sprout midge is typically tied with a foam post and you cut it really short. But I'm going to cut this kind of maybe a little bit longer than normal. Just like that. So anyway, it's a very popular midge, and the good thing about it is you can tie this in a whole bunch of different colors. The 2 main colors of hackle that you'll use for this are black and grizzly.